What is a solo chanter? Why did I have a solo chanter in my pipes at the time? What makes a chanter a solo chanter versus a band chanter? Because beyond practical use, I can get on a bagpipe supply website or a maker's website right now. Not all of them, but a lot of them will have listings that say solo chanter. What does that mean?
Yeah, man. Yeah. All right, so we're doing band versus solo chanters.
Here's a fun little story. I one time borrowed a solo chanter, okay? It was all Blackwood with a Blackwood sole, and it was super cool looking, and I think that it sounded great, but I'm very affected by, like, placebo stuff, but I borrowed it from a friend of mine. He was really nice to let me borrow it because 'cause I'd never tried a solo chanter before, and I went and played a funeral with it, and my reed was having some troubles. I reached down, grabbed that beautiful black sole.
Tell me no.
I
You
bro
grabbed
I
it from the
busted the
bottom.
thing in half, grabbed it from the bottom, and I can tell you, I've never done that again since, but,
I've done it once in my life. I've done it once
I
in my life. It was like negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit.
mhm.
And some folks may have seen it. It's like the old Dojo promo video that we used to have where I was playing pipes with somebody kind of around Albany and it was so cold. And I just remember we were running around doing like the B-roll and getting all the shots that we wanted for this promo video. And it was so cold. And I didn't even really twist it. I just accidentally grabbed it from the bottom and just gave it a little torque. And then but I was in the midst of thinking to myself, oh, wait, I shouldn't do this. This is a Blackwood chit. And it just
Crack.
split. It just split right up the middle vertically. Yep.
Yeah.
I've done it once. And then,
Yep.
yeah, with the
Once is
Blackwood, you can't
enough,
do that.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So, nothing like, obviously, that's a bad habit. I shouldn't have grabbed it from the bottom. I shouldn't have broken my friend's chanter, and I still feel guilty about that. But in context, what is a solo chanter? Why did I have a solo chanter in my pipes at the time? What makes a chanter a solo chanter versus a band chanter? Because beyond practical use, I can get on a bagpipe supply website or a maker's website right now. Not all of them, but a lot of them will have listings that say solo chanter. What does that mean?
Okay. Solo chanters and band chanters are not radically different from each other. As a matter of fact, I had an old nail prototype band chanter that I used when I did all my heavy solo playing. Well, it is. It was just a band chanter that I decided to use for the solos. When you see a chanter on a website or at a store that's listed as a solo chanter, it's usually a chanter that is designed specifically with the soloist in mind. It'll typically have slightly smaller holes, and we can get into why that is momentarily, but it'll typically have slightly smaller holes. And then sometimes it'll be made out of Blackwood instead of the polypenco material that other chanters are made out of. And so that tends to be what the solar chanter is used for. So the next question is, do you need one? So
Mhm.
if you're a piper, do you need a solo chanter that's different from the chanter that you play in the band?
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
And the answer is yes. Okay. So if you're playing in a band, okay, the moment that you sign the dotted line and you sign your first multi-million dollar pipe band contract.
We're all getting
No,
rich
that's
off
not a
of our
thing.
pipe band habit, aren't we?
Right. No, so the moment you join a band is in my mind the moment you now committed to needing a second chanter, which
Hmm.
by the way, if you have a second chanter, you probably definitely want a second set of drone reeds as well, so that one set of drone reeds could be generally calibrated to the strength of your band reed versus your solo reed, which might be ever so slightly different, which means they should be calibrated ever so slightly differently. So the moment you join a band, in my mind, you're committing to bringing another chanter into the mix and probably another set of drone reeds so that you can always be well calibrated. Now you can switch back and forth just by switching your drone reeds out and putting the new chanter in. You don't need a second set of pipes. People ask that a lot. You don't need a second set of pipes. When I played in SFU as a younger person, I also played solos quite a bit, and I just had my different chanter and my different drone reeds that I could swap in and out.
This is me feeling I immediately feel slightly self-conscious as I realize that I have my 2 sets of pipes hanging in the background right here, like, "You don't need them. That was my excuse for getting the 2nd set. I
Right.
need these."
Yeah, don't get me wrong. When I'm playing solos and playing in the band, I would have 2 sets. But also, I'm kind of a a weirdo and I'm playing at a super high level. So there are some benefits, but even so, I mean, arguably my solo level was better 10, 15
Well,
years ago. And when I just had the chanter and the reeds anyway. So
yeah. Not to play into absolute, like, tired old tropes, but maybe we should have a warning at the beginning. Do not play this audio in front of your romantic partner, because if you want to be able to tell
yeah,
them that you need a second set of pipes, we might accidentally debunk that here.
yeah.
Or a
Warning.
third set or a fourth set. That's
Right.
kind of what happens.
Exactly. Honey, I need a fourth set of bagpipes.
Yeah.
Well, you don't play the first three sets. Well, this one's
If
going
I
to be
had a
different.
fourth.
So, and then when you're in a band, you'll have two different chanters. That's the main point we left off at.
Yeah, that's
There's a
right.
couple of reasons for that. A band chanter does often tend to be ever so slightly harder than what you would be optimal for your solo reed. So that tends to be true. But the other thing is that band chanter, I like to think of it as like property of the band. So if you go to band practice and they have to change the tape on the D and the F and whatever to get you to be in tune with everybody else, like that's them. That's going to be whatever pitch they decide. That's what you're going to go with. And that's the thing that's, we want to keep it so that's always going to match what's going on in the band. And then meanwhile, your solo chanter is kind of whatever you want to do. So
Mm.
you have two chanters. And by the way, I keep a third chanter going, which is my B flat chanter. It's just something I like to keep going. And it's great when I'm doing projects on the computer or when I want to play with another instrumentalist. I just kind of always have that B flat chanter that I know is going to be pretty close to B flat. It's going well. It's the chanter for me, so
Mhm.
on and so forth, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. So the main thing with the band and the solo chanter is not like the design of it for me. It's the fact that the band chanter is property of the band and the solo chanter is property of you, right? So if you're going to go play a funeral gig, you're playing your solo chanter. You're not playing the band chanter because you only play the band chanter when you are playing with the band and maybe a little bit of practice each day just to keep it going.
Mm.
But that's the main thought process there. Now, from
So,
there, do you need a solo chanter that's $350 made of beautiful African Blackwood? Okay.
again,
And
hang on a sec, hang on, pause. If
pause.
your romantic partner is in the room, put on headphones.
Yeah. What is it? Do not open at work or something?
Right, yeah, exactly. Not safe for work here. Yeah.
Yeah. Not safe for work or not safe for marriage. Okay. But
Yeah.
do you need a $350 African Blackwood chanter for your solo playing? And the answer is no. People play African Blackwood chanters because they do get an ever so slightly more mellow sound, I guess, and they have a certain je ne sais quoi, maybe a certain mellowness and softness to it, and so on and so forth. However, if you lined up 10 pipers, all perfectly equal in every respect, except for the fact that they were playing Blackwood chanter versus plastic. If you lined up all 10 and you did a blind ear test to see if you could tell, I highly doubt anyone could actually tell.
Oh, yeah, there have been so many great, like, tests done with, like, Stradivarius versus modern violins or with, cheap material flutes versus pure gold flutes, stuff like that. It doesn't seem to be a consistent marker of tonal
Mm-mm.
quality, the
Yep.
materials.
It's like you should use whatever you can get a great sound out of. The Blackwood chanters have another cool benefit is they do tend to be more comfortable on the hands. And
Yeah.
the fingers and especially the burl can be a little bit better. And so if that's true, like by all means, like Blackwood chanter, I use a Blackwood chanter for solos, and I don't feel like I would be that interested in getting a plastic one. So like I get it. If Blackwood is what you want to do, if you want to spend that $350 and get yourself a nice Blackwood, go for it. But it's by no means necessary. Certainly not. You could win a professional grade solo competition with a plastic one, no problem. And it probably happens all the time. Uh,
So it seems like maybe a witty, or maybe not witty, but efficient way to put this is that the definition of what a solo chanter is it can mean design, but it also can mean designation.
Yeah, it's
And we
more of a
might even say,
designation than design, yeah.
yeah, it always means designation. There might be some design
Mhm.
elements sometimes, maybe, but really it's what are you using it for?
Yeah, exactly. So the solo chanter is like your battle axe for your individual application. You might have a solo chanter that just, man, that thing's just stable and I can go 45 minutes and it just seems like it just works at that funeral and it just sounds great. And by the way, if you're a gigging piper who also plays competitive solos, there's another designation line where maybe you have your gig chanter that's just perfect for the gigs. And then maybe you have a solo chanter that's just ideal for playing the solos. I definitely know some players, and I am amongst them, who have dabbled with a pibroch specific chanter versus a light music specific chanter. We've dabbled with
Mm.
that. Usually you end up deciding that it's not really worth keeping two chanters going, but maybe sometimes it is. Gordon Duncan used to also have a chanter that was like particularly well suited for playing all the funny false notes.
Oh,
So
yeah,
like,
that makes sense.
so I think he would switch to that chanter even mid performance. He might switch to that chanter just when he came on a tune that he was going to play that had all the funny notes. But don't quote me on that. I think that's just a myth I heard somewhere, but maybe it's true.
That makes sense. My personal experience with some limited experimentation has been that some chanters and also some reeds get cross-fingered notes better than others. Maybe something to do with spacing or internal bore, I'm not sure what, but
Yeah.
then to reiterate, I could have 2 polypenco Warnock chanters, like, identical in all ways, but my willingness to have one be just for band stuff and I leave it for band stuff, and then
Mhm.
do all my other stuff with the other, that's what makes the other a solo chanter.
Exactly right. So when you're trying to run a band, put yourself in the shoes of the pipe major or the person who tries to get that band tuned up. Nothing
Mhm.
would be worse than someone going home with the band chanter and making all sorts of changes at the soloist's discretion. Like I changed the tuning on the B and the C and the D, and maybe I raised the reed a little bit because I
Right.
felt like it was a little bit sharp on the high hand. So then that person always is coming back to band with a chanter that's totally different than it was last time they were there, right? That doesn't work. You can't do that.
That's not being a team player.
Yeah, and it might not be that the person's not a team player, it might just be that they don't understand, but it is important to understand the band chanter, you need to be stable and always the same at each band practice without a lot of changes, because that's gonna be a big part of how the band's gonna sound good. As soon as you join a band, you should be in understanding that you're gonna need 2 chanters, 1 for band and then 1 for your own, at least 1 for your own solo playing. The more chanters you get going though, like let's say you have 2 or 3 for your solo playing, the more you have going, the harder it's gonna be to really, you'll end up being a jack of all chanters instead of a master
Mm.
of one.
So then, Andrew, why is there so that's designation, and that's the most important part of this, but when it let's I'm curious about design. Why would it be that in some cases, the design factors could be smaller holes for what you might call a solo chanter? Or maybe a better way to ask that question is, why are band intended for band chanters, why do they have bigger holes? They seem to have sometimes have more of an oval shape too. Like, why what effect does that have, and what would be the motivation?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Let's go with why do band chanters specifically designed for the bands, like the McCallum chanter of the old in the old days. I think they've changed it maybe recently, but in the old days they used to have that like big oval holes on the McCallum
Yes,
chanters.
those are what I played in high school, and that's why it's stuck in my mind. That
Yeah,
took a whole finger to cover, you know?
yeah, exactly. So pros and cons, right? What would be the pro of a big oval size hole? Mythologically speaking, the bigger the hole is, the more volume projection you might get. I'm not sure that's actually true at all. It would require some hashtag science to maybe figure that out. But that's at least the myth, right? So nice big holes gives you nice projection and volume from the chanter, right? That would be one. The other thing is that because bands, we talked about in another episode, bands embrace a more moisture centric model for setting it up. Those bottom hand notes tend to change a lot. And so they tend to get a little bit flatter over time. And so you can run into the situation where you need a bit more sharpness on the bottom hand.
Mm,
So those oval holes end up moving the holes a little bit higher, giving you that sort of flexibility that you need on those bottom hand notes. I think that's another reason that the holes tend to be bigger. That's definitely the reason holes tend to get carved out on a lot of
yeah,
band chanters, is
mhm,
because the pitch has gone flat and it seems to be like they go flat and everything else is going good. And it seems to be sort of a systemic issue where that those bottom hand notes are always flat. So you'll end up drilling it out. So I think
yeah,
McCallum, at least in that older model that I'm picturing in my mind, like they just preemptively sold the chanter already drilled out would be kind of a way
mhm.
of looking at it. Okay, but those are the some of the upsides, but then what are the downsides of holes that are really big? And the main downside, the bigger the hole is, the less clarity or like the harder it will be to get really amazing finger clarity. Like, you just know right off the bat, a big low A hole makes the burl harder to do, and it makes
Yes.
the burl harder to get to sound good. Fact. But all the other stuff is true too. The bigger it is, like, the more perfectly your finger has to align with that hole in order to cover it. Like, that has a negative impact on finger work clarity. So, when you're playing in the solos, nice, tidy, small holes will increase your finger clarity overall. And then, obviously, if you're solo competing, increased finger clarity is like, we're all
Mm,
for it.
that's what we're looking
And we
for.
don't need you wouldn't have as much volume, let's say, like the
Mhm.
big holes might have, if that's even true, but you don't need tons of volume as a soloist. Just standard volume is perfectly fine. And as a matter of fact, blasting the judge in the face with tons of volume is probably not what you want when you're
Mm.
playing in the solos. You probably want to present a nice, mellow, refined instrument sounds. So yeah, there would be some design things that are different when it comes to high level band playing and high level solo playing for sure. No doubt.
So take it back off mute. And the summary, the conclusion is everybody needs at least 2 sets of pipes and at least one $350 plus
Yeah.
Blackwood solo chanter.
That's right, and, I think once you have that second set of pipes and that really expensive chanter, you're just gonna be so much more fulfilled, right?
Mm.
As an individual, I just feel like you'll be able to contribute to family life and just be in such a more peaceful way,
You'll be more emotionally
and
available for sure.
definitely the more sets of pipes you have, the more emotionally available you become, yeah,
Mhm.
sensitive.
Yep,
Yeah, and,
yep. Patient.
it just makes you it puts you in the mood to help out around the house as well with, like, chores and stuff. It's
Yeah.
just a well-known, scientifically documented fact.
Yep, yep.
Nice.
That's how we do a service to our community right there.